Hello again, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of Battle of the Heroes and Villains. Welcome to the show edition. Today we're taking a look at a more minor character in Grimjaw the Dragon, so I do expect this will be a shorter episode than normal. In fact, there was a consideration of whether or not I should do this or perhaps just stick to the main characters, but I feel it's important to take a look at the minor characters to properly balance the scales. After all, if we only look at the major characters, it is likely the scales would be weighted too high towards the A's and B's, so taking a look at the minor characters who are unlikely to score higher than a C gives us a more reasonable average, as you will likely see in a bit. So, unfortunately, there was a little bit of an error due to the fact that this poll was being done just as VoteBot was changing over to its new system, which means the chart was not able to be displayed. However, as you can see here, 20% of voters gave him a B, 60% of voters gave him a C, another 20% gave him a D, and nothing above or below either of those scores. And if you put it all together and consider A a score of 5 and F a score of 1, you can see that he currently has a score of an exact 3, which puts him second to last. And when you consider that a character who only appeared for one single scene was able to score higher than Cross, it is quite an indictment of the Ranger, is it not? And admittedly, a bit of an indictment on Rose, as she only scored 0.8 points higher than Grimjaw, who again only appeared for a single scene. But no more talking about other characters, let us see what people had to say about Grimjaw himself. To start off with, we have a comment from Wicked Cat. I gave him a C. I do like the sarcastic humour in his voice, and it led to a number of funny moments with the players. He was a good tease to what's to come, but he was only in one episode, so I can't give him a higher ranking. After that, we have a much larger comment from Alicia Lene. I give Grimjaw a B. He had a strong entry scene with making the party hide until he made it clear he knew why they were there. He was informed enough about them and stayed focused on needing to bring them back, which, when I first watched, I thought it was odd for Simula to tell him to bring the party back yet kill him before he could. After rewatching, I understood with his word choice that his intention wasn't to bring them back. His job was to start sowing questions and those nuggets of doubt in the party, to get under the skin of those he could, and it worked for a time. He had a nice accent, and it was clever of him to toy with them, giving them a riddle, even though I still don't understand how the answer was rug when railing would have made much more sense, given not every set of stairs has a rug going up and down it, but it's standard that every stairs will have a railing for safety. I also enjoyed his patience. Even though his fate had already been decided upon by Simula in the shadows, that being to poison him so he died quietly for her to make a show by stabbing him in the skull, I was impressed with him standing by his loyalty to Simula, as I doubt anyone would expect a green dragon to have loyalty like that. It would have been interesting if the party had tried fighting Grimjaw and running. Luckily they didn't have to fight him, given how much the Minotaur fight took out of them not long before the dragon's appearance. His talking casually with the party, giving them information on his kind being that they trick people into giving themselves up for dinner, was a good distraction for Simula, an assassin, to get into place who used Jiminya for a hostage as he introduced herself to the group. He was cool, even though we only knew him for a short period. If things had played out differently and he'd lived, it would have been interesting to see if he would have showed up in the Dragonlands and if he would have helped the party later on. He'll always be remembered. And some very comprehensive statements from Alicia. Though, to clarify a couple of things, Grimjaw did not actually know what the plan from Simula was. Simula had told him that the plan was to bring them back to Direction. He simply tried to use his words because, as it was noted by Josh, not by Grimjaw, he wasn't the one who said this, green dragons prefer to convince you to jump into their mouths rather than having to chase you down. A combination of pride and also a little bit of laziness. The thing is, what Simula's real plan is she simply wanted to enjoy watching the party fight a dragon. She had set Grimjaw up to be that obstacle, and when it ended up being just a long talk fest, she got bored and killed him. The thing with Simula was that her entire motive was her entertainment, her continuous boredom. Much like the god Zeech from Warhammer 40k, she was the kind of person who would intentionally sabotage her own plans simply because the ensuing chaos would be more entertaining than a straight-up simple victory. Also much like the character of Pandora from Elguna's Shive. Winning was less interesting to her than playing was. Again, hence why there was that conflict between her and her assassin. Her assassin was trying to go for the simple, efficient, pragmatic route, and that's not what she wanted. That said, it is also a very good point that Alicia brings up that one of the most interesting things about Grimjaw was his loyalty, and particularly his own unique brand of loyalty. Up next, we have a rather short comment from Ripple Effect MLP. The same thing I said about Jenkins. Nothing bad, nothing good, and barely anything memorable. C. Oh, and I should probably say that Jenkins was a character I considered to, and even did run a poll for, but it became clear pretty quickly that Jenkins was a bit too minor a character for this poll, so I ended up scrapping his poll. Then we have a comment from Ace of Flames. I give Grimjaw a C. He was a one-scene wonder. He worked incredibly well in the one episode he was in, but he can't go higher than a C on my scale since he simply can't stack up with the characters in B and above who had far more screen time and development. Again though, he made every second he had count. I still remember how the tension immediately went from 0 after beating the Minotaur to 101 as he heard his approach, and the music dropped as soon as he landed. He is an excellent example of how to play a green dragon. He immediately tried to endear himself to the party with his friendly Brooklyny accent and his politeness in trying to get the party to come back with him willingly. However, when they started challenging his words, he viciously bit back with retorts that genuinely sound reasonable at first, such as the race car discussion, where he points out how weird it is that they immediately won't listen to a word he's saying because he's a green dragon, but they have no problem trusting a werewolf. Also, in hindsight, that almost sounds like something Shylin would say if he were in this situation. Because the group isn't as tight-knit, he's able to get in their heads a bit here, like a precursor to Simula. He was a very intriguing and fun character, and I thoroughly enjoyed the little time he had. A shame he had to die so soon. And yes, this is indeed why I decided, despite being a character who only appeared in a single scene, he was worthy of being put on this list, as his introduction did actually have an impact on the story, and he had a memorable, quirky personality. Up next we have a comment from Legendbringer. I give him a C, but only because he was kind of a teaser of what was to come, a taste of the type of villains we would get to see and understand. If anything, he's like Ronan Kenshin's Jine. Yeah, cool and all, but nothing compared to the villains that come later. That, and considering my love of green dragons as schemers, having one who's just a lapdog is just silly, and I want a real green dragon to nom him to death. And this is actually a very good point by Legendbringer, that he served as very much a teaser to the masterminds that come later. Though I would argue that it is that very thing that makes him still a green dragon. As it was said in his own told backstory, he was a full-on independent green dragon who lost to Simula. Rather than it being him being disgraced to green dragons, it was a sign of how dangerous Simula was, that she was able to turn a green dragon into her lapdog. After this we have a comment from Darth Revan 226. He was okay. He served his purpose, but was not that memorable. All in all, I give him a C. And finally we have a comment from Handsome Volpe. Grimjaw existed. It was pretty inconsequential in the grand scheme of things. Thumbs up for the Transformers reference in his name though? D. And I'm afraid that's a reference that I don't quite get. So as you can see, the general consensus is for some he was forgettable and others he was short-lived but had a memorable role. However, the next time we will be getting to look at a much more significant villain as we take a look at the boss bitch herself, Princess Simula Marla. Thank you all for listening. I will see you all next time.